Good afternoon, class. Today I'm presenting my final presentation board for my study abroad trip to Greece, Athens, semester 1 of summer 2019. I decided to do my board on the concept of the colors of Greece. Throughout the landscape, historical museums, daily life, beautiful bright colors are used in the beauty materials, paintings, and everyday life. My concept of my board demonstrates pictures using those beautiful bright colors. I also decided to do my board on the concept of what Harris explained, how Greeks strive for perfection in their body, their mind, and their soul in everyday life. I decided to do the orientation of the board with a quote by a famous Greek philosopher, Thales. "The happy man is the one who has a healthy body, a wealthy soul, and an educated nature." I decided to group the pictures by that caption. Body. The perfect body is captured in cafes, the food, illustrations and paintings, as well as exercise. The first image demonstrates cafes. They are everywhere on every street of Greece. In order to have a perfect body, it is very important to have the perfect diet. Here is one example of a meal I had in Greece. It is the falafel, served with pita, tzatziki sauce, onions, and tomatoes. The fruit and the colors of the food are just so fresh here because it is grown locally. Moving on to the next picture, the imagery of the art. The body is inscripted in the most natural, pure form, naked. I decided to incorporate this image. And finally, I incorporated an image of one of the ancient theaters. This was an honor to perform here. Throughout the historical sites, I toured ancient theaters, the ancient Olympian theater, as well as the exercise area. And it was very important to have a perfect body. And the ideal body was the everyday young man with a fit body. Moving on to the perfect soul. This is captured in religion. Greek Roman Orthodox is a popular religion in Greece. The chapel, as well as all of the churches, are illustrated with ancient paintings of Jesus, and all of the metallic paint was used in ancient times as well. I decided to incorporate the use of a light fixture because when Harris was explaining the theaters, a lot of the families or important members would donate light fixtures or metallic items showing their faith and generosity in the church. Moving on to the perfect mind. This would be important to have a well-educated nature, as described in my quote by Thales. We toured one of the first schools, interior architecture schools in Athens, and I decided to incorporate the image of one of the most beautiful architecture areas I saw in the place. I also, throughout the streets in Greece, there's so much graffiti, and I decided instead of incorporating graffiti, one of the beautiful murals, but with that same idea in mind, how important art and the use of bright colors is, and that is captured in this photo. How animals are treated is a huge part of Greek lifestyle. They do not believe in hurting any type of animal. And a lot of the transportation in the small islands, the streets are so narrow, you have to use mules or by foot. And this is one of the images I captured on our 3-island hop on the last day. It is the horses or mules, and they were offering rides on them, but on one of the islands we actually saw them carrying heavy bags of cement for construction. And finally, this last image demonstrates, I think, the perfect Greek lifestyle. It has the beautiful landscape and views of the water, and it is a nice quaint location with a table and chair. And a lot of families that are locals would just sit and enjoy an appetizer, a meal together, and just talk and socialize with these views for hours. It is a huge part of the lifestyle. And then finally, I decided to incorporate, because I had so many great images and ideas for this board, a category of beauty, because perfection was so important to the Greeks. I decided to include one with architecture. This image was inspiring to me because it had all the bright colors as well as the architecture, incorporating both new and old, because that is a huge part of Greece. In the cities, you will see an old building, and then right next to them, you will see a new, and that it was really interesting to me. Going on to this next picture, the Greeks were masters at boats and traveling, and I really wanted to include something involving the water and ships into my board. So I thought this picture was a great illustration with the asymmetric view of the boats and just seeing the natural architecture of Greece. Moving on to the next picture, I decided to incorporate one with the balconies because every home is required to have a balcony in Greece because the views are so beautiful. And just seeing the nice vibrant colors and the natural landscape engulfing the space, just that was what stuck out to me in Greece. And finally, the last image is another illustration of a cafe and a walking point in Greece on one of our last island stops. It just showcases the landscape and how they build these coverings just with greenery. It's really inspiring. Overall, I decided to use the orientation of my page in the shape of a cross with my images and having the quote as a focal point because religion was so important to the Greeks, as well as those 3 points I mentioned, the perfect body, mind, and soul. Moving on to my travel journal, I decided to bind my book because it was such a great memento and there was so much information in the trip I learned. I decided to first begin it with one of my favorite stops. This was one of the first places we toured in Athens. Moving on, I decided to include my departure and arrival. So it was so exciting. 14-hour ride. I included a packing list with some fun graphics. And then the orientation of each page, I decided to include the day, the location, the date, as well as things I did checked off. Because we did so much in each day, it was important to try and showcase that. On my first day, we actually stayed in Athens at the Byron Hotel. It was a family-owned stay. And it was really cool because you could just walk out the front door and you would be in the heart of the city with all of the little shops. And on the top, they actually have a rooftop garden where it has a view of the Acropolis, and that's what this image is. This is shown at night. And this is one of the first meals I had was a Greek salad. And it was shocking to me, just the Greek lifestyle just hit me in the face. The salads, there's no lettuce in any of the salads, like just the culture and everything is so different. And this is another view just showcasing the natural beauty. And in every page I showcased an example of what we did and tried to take notes during every step. So as you can see, I tried to incorporate some of the food I had because food was so good there, so fresh. And then some of the museums we went to, as well as some of the important monuments like the Acropolis with Harris. She was such an important part of our trip, and ancient museums and theaters, as well as the Parthenon, that is such a big part of Greece. The subway, because I wanted to include some type of transportation. And as you can see, it's crazy how close the Greek lifestyle is. Those are just 5 different pairs of hands, how close you are to people. And then I included the first school in Athens, and when we went and visited the interior architecture school, that was the class and the professor, and just seeing how the classrooms were set up. Every classroom has a beautiful view, and I think that is so inspirational to learn. I decided to include the new museum of the Acropolis because I thought it was really unique how it is parallel to the Acropolis and Parthenon, and it actually has the same dimensions as the Parthenon. That was really cool, and I decided to capture some of the ancient stone carvings, and I thought it was really interesting to learn that we don't actually have, even though they're from Greece, all of the original pieces. They're in the British Museum, so we have some of the copies. And then more food, of course, and I decided to, in some of the pages, include like the ticket stubs because I thought that was a fun memento, and just some pictures of me in them because it was so fun. One of the ancient castles, this was the first time our class visited it because our professor changes the trip up a little bit each year, and that was one of my favorite places. It was really cool to see one of the first, how in ancient times they have bathing houses and everyone goes in a community type bath, and it was cool to see the structure of that still staying there. And then this was a really cool city, super beautiful, how it's gated and no cars can fit in here, and they turned a lot of the old homes into hotels, and people have to stay a minimum of I think 3 days, Harris explained, because it's so hard for the transportation to get through there. And then finally, this is one of my favorite most memories that I had of the trip, was the ancient theater and how the acoustics, Harris and my professor stood in the middle and they could hear a pin drop, a penny drop, a piece of paper crumbled from the very top of the stadium, of the stairs. And I thought it was really interesting how anyone in the audience could hear the acoustics perfectly if it was quiet. And then finally, I decided to end my journal with the last day of the trip. It was our 3-island cruise. I've never been on a cruise, and it was super fun to spend time with my class and also capture some of those unique island experiences with little shops and animals. And then on my last page, I decided to incorporate some landscape aspects of Greece. I really enjoyed seeing some of what makes Greece special. The landscape, the clear blue water, some steps that I really enjoyed. This quote, "Life is special, enjoy it one step at a time." And my last page is one of my favorite memories as well. And that is it. Overall, I had such a great time on this trip, and it is just one of the first of many trips as a young designer I'm going to incorporate into my future. Thank you.